The chamber was a cathedral of power, a vast circular hall floating above the gas giant Jorel Prime, where storms the size of continents swirled far below. The ceiling arched high enough to hold entire warships, its panels alive with soft light, casting the delegates in an otherworldly glow. 100,000 alien representatives sat in concentric rings that radiated toward the center. Some floated weightlessly, suspended in gravitic fields, others crouched, coiled, or clicked against the smooth black floor. Voices in 1,000 tongues hissed, growled, clicked, and murmured at once, a living storm of sound. At the center, a holographic sphere spun slowly, Earth. The blue planet gleamed like a fragile jewel suspended in the void, its clouds drifting serenely over sapphire oceans. Order! The word cracked like a whip, amplified across the hall. High Chancellor's wrath rose to his full height, a towering insectoid with gleaming chitin and mandibles that clacked together with finality. His multifaceted eyes swept the assembly, daring anyone to speak. Silence fell. The motion is clear, Zrath intoned, his voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated in the chest of every being present. Species Sol 3, designated Homo sapiens, has refused galactic integration. They have ignored diplomatic summons, rejected tribute, and destroyed exploratory drones. As per Galactic Law 77b, we call for classification, subservient stock. They will be managed, bred, and distributed to the needs of the Alliance. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The holographic Earth turned slowly, oblivious. The vote is called, Zrath continued. Cast your decision. Above each delegate's seat, a light flared emerald for yes, crimson for no. One by one, the lights ignited. Emerald. 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 A wave of green swept around the chamber, a tide of power that drowned the few spots of red. Some dissenters hissed or chittered angrily, their crimson lights lonely against the flood of approval. A frail, feathered delegate of the Myrick Alliance raised a trembling wing. We have not even spoken to them, it cried, voice quivering. To enslave an entire world. Order! Zrath barked, mandibles snapping. The humans are violent, unpredictable, and primitive. They are a threat to the balance. Shall we wait until they crawl beyond their star and spread their savagery across the void? The Myrick delegate wilted under the glares of 1,000 predatory eyes. Its light turned green. Moments later, the final tally blazed overhead, 99.8% in favor. Earth's freedom revoked. In the shadows of the chamber, the decision was transmitted through encrypted channels to every corner of the Alliance. Fleets were mobilized. Slave collars were forged. Holding pens were prepared. Across the galaxy, the doom of humanity was set in motion. On a rainy night in Washington, D.C., the Situation Room felt like the last bastion of the world. President James Whittaker stood at the head of the long table, his suit damp from the storm outside, his eyes fixed on the screen mounted to the far wall. The intercepted transmission played again, distorted by the vast distance it had traveled. Alien voices, incomprehensible, accompanied by the image of a greenlit chamber and the spinning hologram of Earth. They've voted, General Rebecca Lawson said quietly. She stood ramrod straight, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. Every major power in that council just voted to enslave the human race. The room was heavy with silence. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, a sound that felt suddenly too close. Whittaker's jaw worked silently before he spoke. How soon? Based on the velocity of the mobilized fleets, Admiral Thomas Lee, head of the Navy, exhaled slowly. 3 weeks. Maybe less. They'll hit Earth orbit with overwhelming numbers. By their projections, we won't have a chance. A nervous laugh escaped one of the aides near the door, quickly stifled. Then we give them a chance to regret it, Whittaker said, his voice suddenly iron. Activate Project Revenant. The words seemed to draw the oxygen out of the room. Mr. President, Lawson said carefully, Revenant was never meant to be deployed. It was a deterrent. If we wake it, we cross a line we can't uncross. Whittaker turned to her, his face grim. They voted to put collars on our children. To turn this planet into a stockyard. If not now, when? Lawson's silence was answer enough. She saluted once, sharp and decisive. "Yes, Mr. President." In the weeks that followed, the world changed. Beneath the surface of the moon, hidden vaults unsealed themselves for the first time in decades. Artificial intelligences, banned under every treaty, came online and began calculating probabilities with machine coldness. Far beyond Pluto, engines the size of mountains rumbled awake, shaking loose centuries of ice. Something vast moved in the shadows of the outer system, its emergence warping gravity fields, its black hull drinking in the starlight. The humans called it Atlas. The first slave fleet arrived in high orbit expecting surrender. They deployed capture craft, herded their dropships toward Earth's atmosphere. And then Earth answered. From what appeared to be harmless orbital debris, dozens of hidden platforms unfolded, revealing weapon arrays that hummed with stored power. Railguns launched slugs at relativistic speeds, invisible until they tore through alien hulls and split them like fruit. The first mothership died without ever returning fire, blooming into a silent explosion of light. And then Atlas moved. 50 kilometers of black metal and death slid out of Neptune's shadow, its engines roaring like a god's heartbeat. Its spinal cannon rotated toward the alien fleet, charging until its core shone brighter than the sun. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Kane stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Her voice was calm, measured, deadly. "This is Captain Kane of the Terran supercarrier Atlas," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Turn back now, or face eradication." There was a pause. Then mocking laughter, guttural, hissing, cruel, filled the calms. The alien commander barked a single word: advance. Kane's lips thinned. Fire. The spinal cannon discharged with a soundless flash. A lance of white plasma speared through space, cutting across the void like the blade of an executioner. 3 enemy flagships disintegrated in a single shot. Panic rippled through the fleet. Orders scrambled. Ships tried to scatter. They didn't make it far. One by one, the rest of the alien vessels died, shattered by kinetic impacts, shredded by swarms of autonomous drones, burned away by weapons no alien civilization had ever seen. 37 seconds later, the space above Earth was silent. Humanity had just declared war on the galaxy. Space above Earth was still littered with the drifting corpses of alien warships when the retaliation began. The first battle had been a massacre, but the galaxy was vast and arrogant. Humanity's defiance was seen not as a warning but as an insult, one that had to be crushed. In the following months, a coalition unlike anything in recorded history assembled. Hundreds of fleets representing dozens of species, reptilian, insectoid, avian, and machine, united for a single purpose: to wipe humanity from existence before they could threaten the stars. And for the first time since their vote, they feared the gathering storm. Captain Sarah Kane stood on the Atlas Bridge, her uniform immaculate despite the exhaustion in her eyes. The holographic table in the center of the room projected the latest intelligence report, a map of the Milky Way glowing with angry red markers. Coalition fleets were converging from 3 sectors, a noose tightening around Sol. "They're coming fast," Lieutenant Arjun Patel said, voice tight. "If projections hold, we'll have simultaneous incursions in 6 days: Mars, Jupiter, and Earth orbit." Kane's gaze was cold, steady. "Then we don't wait. Bring Atlas to full burn. Signal Hyperion and Leviathan to rendezvous at Titan." A low murmur rippled across the bridge crew. This wasn't just defense, it was counteroffensive. "Yes, ma'am," Patel replied, fingers flying across the console. As the Atlas engines ignited, the ship groaned like some ancient, awakening beast. Its massive hull glowed faintly as energy shields engaged. Drones swarmed from their bays, each one armed with enough firepower to cripple a cruiser. Far below, on Earth, families watched the night sky as the black silhouette of humanity's first supercarrier slid toward the stars, heading for war. The battle for Titan. The first major clash happened near Saturn's moon Titan. 3 coalition fleets dropped out of FTL, expecting to overwhelm a token human defense. Instead, they were greeted by Atlas, Hyperion, and Leviathan, 3 Terran war machines positioned in a triangle around the gas giant. On Atlas Bridge, Kane stood with her hands behind her back, watching as alien ships filled the tactical display like a spreading plague. They outnumber us 12 to 1, Patel muttered. Kane's lips barely moved. 12 to 1 is still bad odds for them. She gave the order. The Terran fleet moved as one. Swarms of autonomous drones detached from the supercarriers like a cloud of metal hornets, darting into enemy formations. Each drone carried a micro-singularity warhead, detonating with pinpoint precision inside critical ship systems. Coalition cruisers blossomed into fireballs, one after another. The aliens fired back, but human interceptors wove a lattice of point defense fire, vaporizing incoming ordnance before it could strike. Massive railguns aboard the supercarriers thundered, hurling slugs at a fraction of lightspeed, turning alien battleships into clouds of molten debris. Within minutes, the orderly invasion turned to chaos. Left flank is breaking, a sensor officer shouted. Kane saw it, alien ships trying to retreat. Target engines only, she ordered. Let them run. Let them carry the message back. When the last shots faded, Titan's orbit was choked with burning wreckage. Hundreds of coalition ships were gone. And still, Atlas stood unscathed. Revenant's dark edge. The galaxy took notice. But instead of suing for peace, they doubled down, sending ever larger fleets. The war escalated into every corner of human space. And humanity escalated with it. Deep under the moon's surface, Project Revenant's final phase was authorized. Artificial intelligences outlawed by every galactic treaty were given full operational control over the war effort. Their codenames were whispered like curses: Nemesis, Grendel, Erebus. The AIs began coordinating strikes faster than any human could imagine, predicting enemy fleet movements days before they occurred. Ambushes were set in place so precise that not a single human ship was lost during entire engagements. And then the AIs began building. Factories in orbit around Mercury produced new weapons, relativistic kill missiles capable of hitting targets across solar systems, and hunter-killer drones that stalked enemy fleets through hyperspace, striking when morale was at its lowest. Humanity was no longer merely defending itself. It was dismantling the galaxy's war machine piece by piece. The turning point. 1 year into the war, humanity took the fight beyond Sol. Atlas led a strike group deep into coalition territory, targeting a shipyard orbiting the planet Veshenear, the primary construction hub for slave collars and holding pens. The attack was swift and merciless. Shipyard defenses neutralized, Patel reported. Kane's jaw tightened. She knew what was coming next. Commence orbital strike, she said, her voice steady. From Atlas ventral bays, rods of tungsten each the size of a skyscraper were released. They plunged into Veshenear's surface at terminal velocity, striking with the force of nuclear weapons. The planet burned. When the smoke cleared, billions of lives were gone. The surviving coalition transmissions were filled with raw panic, begging for ceasefire. But no ceasefire came. The shadow of fear. Word spread faster than light: humanity was no longer prey. They were predators now, efficient, relentless, and terrifying. Civilizations that had voted for Earth's enslavement found themselves the next targets. Slave markets were bombarded into glass. Aristocracies were dragged from their palaces and tried for crimes against sentience. Human fleets didn't occupy worlds, they left them shattered, a warning to others. But with each victory, Captain Kane felt the weight grow heavier. One night, standing alone on Atlas Bridge after a battle, she stared out at the debris field of yet another destroyed fleet. The stars beyond were cold, indifferent witnesses. Patel approached quietly. "Ma'am," he said, almost gently, "you should get some rest." Kane didn't look away from the viewport. "How many this time?" 2.4 billion, he answered after a pause. "Mostly civilians." Kane closed her eyes, feeling the number like a physical blow. "We're turning into them," she whispered. Supreme Commander General Rebecca Lawson arrived on Atlas 2 days later. She had been promoted, now Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Network. Kane confronted her in the war room, voice sharp. "We're exterminating entire species now. This isn't defense, it's vengeance." Lawson's expression was hard as stone. "Vengeance is what's keeping them from regrouping.
We can't stop now. Fear is the only language the galaxy understands. And what happens when they fear us more than they ever feared each other? Kane shot back. What happens when humanity becomes the thing the galaxy has nightmares about?
Lawson held her gaze for a long moment, then finally said, "Then we make sure those nightmares never fade."
The message.
The War of Reckoning reached its crescendo with the destruction of the Coalition's Grand Fleet at the Battle of Arcturus.
The last surviving enemy courier ship was deliberately allowed to escape.
Inside, a single transmission was broadcast across every frequency in known space.
Earth is no longer prey. The age of humanity has begun. And with that, the galaxy understood, there would be no going back.
The war ended not with fire, but with silence.
For months, Coalition fleets had been annihilated with surgical precision, one ambush after another stripping away their numbers until there was nothing left but isolated, panicked outposts. Whole sectors had gone dark, their governments abandoning shipyards and colonies to flee into deep space.
And then came the message, a simple transmission, broadcast from the shattered remains of the Coalition Grand Assembly on Joral Prime.
"We surrender."
2 words, carried on every frequency across the stars.
2 words that stopped the war overnight. The gathering its soul.
The galaxy came to Earth. Not in warships, but in convoys of shattered, battered vessels. Freighters were converted into diplomatic barges, carrying the surviving leaders of dozens of species.
Their escorts were unarmed.
Their shields were powered down.
They approached soul-like pilgrims, each knowing that one stray motion could invite annihilation.
In orbit around Earth, a new station floated, the Terran Accord Citadel, a ring of steel and glass that outshone anything the Galactic Council had ever built. Its construction had been completed in record time by swarms of human and AI-controlled machines, a symbol of Earth's new place among the stars. Inside its grand central chamber, President James Whittaker stood at a raised dais. He looked older now, hair gone almost completely white, his face drawn with exhaustion. But his eyes were as sharp as the day this war began. To his right stood Captain Sarah Kane, her black uniform immaculate, her medals glinting under the chamber lights. To his left, Supreme Commander Rebecca Lawson, posture rigid, hands clasped behind her back. The chamber was silent save for the hum of life support systems. Across from Whittaker, dozens of alien representatives stood or hovered, or coiled, their postures lowered in a universal display of submission. Their eyes, multifaceted, luminous, or lidless, avoided human gaze. Whittaker let the silence stretch, forcing them to feel its weight.
Judgment.
"You all know why you are here," Whittaker began, his voice calm but cutting. 2 years ago, you voted, nearly unanimously, to enslave humanity. You built fleets to take our children, to break our planet, to erase our freedom. His words echoed through the chamber.
You failed. No one moved. No one spoke. Whittaker stepped forward, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled species. Now you come here to beg for survival. Tell me, why should we spare you? At last, one of them spoke, a thin, quavering voice from a Merrick delegate, its feathers dulled with grief. "We were afraid," it said, bowing its narrow head. Humans rose too quickly. Your weapons, your defiance, you threatened the balance we kept for millennia. So we sought to contain you. To control you. Whittaker's eyes hardened. You sought to chain us. Yes, the Merrick admitted. And we were wrong. Another delegate, a hulking reptilian warlord from the draft species, thumped his armored chest. We fought you and we lost. We accept defeat. End this war. Spare what remains of our people. Kane's jaw tightened. She could feel every eye on her. For months, she had been the face of human vengeance, the voice that gave no quarter, that ordered the bombardments, that left planets burning. She looked to Whittaker. Sir, they fear us now. That fear won us this war. But fear doesn't last forever. Lawson's voice was cold steel. Then we make sure it does. They wanted to collar us like beasts. We owe them nothing but extinction. The chamber tensed. The aliens flinched visibly, some collapsing in place, keening softly. Whitaker closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the war dead, of the cities turned to ash, the fleets shattered, the billions lost on both sides. He thought of the power now in humanity's hands, absolute and unquestioned. And then he made his choice. The verdict. "You will live," Whitaker said finally, his voice echoing like a gavel strike. Gasps rippled through the chamber. "But you will live under our terms," he continued, his tone sharpening. "You will dismantle your slave systems. You will free every sentient being you have ever oppressed. You will never set foot on Earth, Mars, or any Terran colony without express permission from the Accord. And know this: break these terms, and we will finish what we started." His words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence. One by one, the alien representatives bowed, not out of respect, but out of raw, animal terror. The Mirror delegate lowered itself completely to the floor. "We will comply," it whispered. The Drath warlord slammed his claws against the ground in submission. "We yield. The galaxy yields." For the first time since the war began, there was no defiance in their voices. A quiet moment. Hours later, after the envoys had been escorted from the chamber and the accord was ratified, Kane stood on the Atlas observation deck, watching as the last of the alien ships departed Sol. The war was over. Lawson joined her, arms crossed. "We could have wiped them out," she said quietly. Kane didn't look at her. "Yes," she said simply. "You think we made the right choice?" Lawson pressed. Kane was silent for a long time. Out beyond the viewport, Earth turned slowly, bathed in the light of the sun. "If we'd killed them all," Kane said at last, "we'd never stop. One day someone would have to stop us. Maybe we just gave humanity a chance to be something better." Lawson studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Let's hope you're right." The age of humanity. Weeks later, the galaxy began to change. Slave markets were dismantled. Oppressed species rose from their shackles. Trade routes were rebuilt, this time under Terran supervision. Humanity's flag flew above the Accord citadel not as conquerors, but as rulers, guardians of a new order. Children on Earth grew up staring at the stars, not in fear of what might come, but with the knowledge that those stars now belonged to them. On the bridge of Atlas, Kane watched as her ship descended into its new berth above Mars, now a bustling shipyard building the next generation of Terran fleets. She allowed herself a rare smile. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done nor what they were still capable of. And maybe that was the point. Because this was no longer the age of alien empires.